Welcome, everybody, to Casting for Two, the podcast, and this is episode number 129. 129 coming at you at the dial. This is your host, Chris, that one guy who is still going. We can't get him to stop. We've submitted a form to whitehouse.gov, and we need 10,000 signatures for President Obama to look at him and get him to stop. That went on way too long, and that is my apologies, but welcome, everybody. I'm happy to be here and to chat with all of you, or for you guys to listen to me talk, because Shop Talk. If you'd like to chat with me, you can do that on Instagram and Twitter, both at casting4two, or email me at castingfor2@gmail.com. And yeah, and also Secret Stage Productions. I gotta mention them because they're wonderful people over there. They have 4 podcasts a week, and we're partners. And if you are ever like, I've listened to every episode of Casting for Two because I'm a super fan, but now I don't have anything to do, go listen to Secret Stage Productions, secretstageproductions.com. And yeah, so I guess I should actually get into my guest for today, because it's a wonderful guest. He's a wonderful man, Sugith Varughese, who is on the Starz show, The Girlfriend Experience, which is it's a TV show now, or miniseries. But it was a movie by Steven Soderbergh, and it was he is just a very talented filmmaker, I tell you. And I had a lot of great chats with Sugith and Sugith. And yeah, so you guys should just listen, and let's get to this episode, okay? So Chris, cue the music, please. I'm very happy to chat with you, just because I was looking at your background, and I was just very excited with how different it was. And so I'm happy to have you on the show.
Okay, great. Glad to do it.
So first off, I ask everybody this question. When did you know acting was something that you could do?
You mean professionally, or just something that I could do in terms of being able to?
I like both of those. Let's say professionally.
It wasn't something I was actually pursuing professionally.
Mm-hmm.
Professionally, I started as a writer,
mm-hmm.
and I ended up early on in my career. I wrote a TV movie for the public broadcasting network in Canada, which is the CBC,
mm-hmm.
and we couldn't cast the lead part because it was somebody like me, which was an Indo-Canadian guy who'd grown up in Canada. And this was 25 years ago, so there were no actors around then. And they actually went to L.A. and found somebody and came back and said, "Oh, we found somebody." I said, "Wow, an Indian actor in L.A., great." Said, No, he's a comedian. Oh, even better, because it was a comedy. Yeah, his name is Howie Mandel. And I went, Howie Mandel? I don't think he's Indian. He said, No, but we'll do something. So they actually flew the director and producer out to L.A. and found a makeup person to paint him brown and brought Howie Mandel in to read, and it didn't work out. But at that point, the movie was going to be canceled, and I begged them to let me audition, and I got the part. and so that's how I started doing it professionally. And I think that's when I knew I could do it professionally, was when that happened. And so since then, I've sort of had parallel careers, acting, writing, whatever. And so that's when I knew I could do it professionally. So let's say 25 years ago, when I wrote my first part.
And it's funny that they had to go to L.A. to find Howie Mandel, who is a Canadian.
Well, that was a requirement,
because
it was for the public broadcasting network up here, so it had to be Canadian. But of course, the fact that he was in L.A. made him much better, of course, than anybody who was living in Canada, if you know what I mean. And the interesting thing was, Howie Mandel wasn't famous at that point. This was before. It was 25 years ago. He was just another stand-up comedian trying to make it big in Los Angeles. So. It was a different time then.
Yeah.
Now, diversity is entirely, it's a whole generation of diverse actors now that you can do anything you want now, but not back then.
Right. I feel like Howie Mandel wakes up every day regretting not getting that role.
I don't think he even remembers not getting that role.
If only I could have done it.
Yeah, no, he's done okay for himself, so no need to feel sorry for Howie Mandel.
And so when so you said your first steps were into writing. How was that process? Getting into the entertainment door, because you wrote for like Fraggle Rock.
I did. I was one of the original writers for Fraggle Rock, because that was shot actually in Toronto.
Oh, okay.
Where I live, and it was a co-production between Jim Henson and the CBC. So, so as a result, there was there was Jim and Jerry Jewell, who was kind of the third Muppet, but he wrote everything Miss Piggy and Kermit ever said, and he was really the creator and head writer on Fraggle Rock. They came here. But they hired Canadian writers and directors, and the crew were all CBC crew, and some of the background, or all the background puppeteers were Canadian. The main puppeteers, of course, came from The Muppet Show and Sesame Street, and had worked with Jim for many years. But it was a real incredible experience, because, Jim Henson directed one of my episodes. I was working for the Muppets. I would have, but that was very early in my career. That was kind of the third thing I worked on was as a writer, was doing that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I'm going to flip back to the acting side, because I love how actors get into character, a certain character that they're going to portray. Is there something you do or exercise you do when you want to get into character?
Well, it's not too mystical. Part of, I'll tell you frankly, when I know that I can do the part is when I figure out how they walk.
Okay.
I find that the physicality is what allows me to be that, the not me part.
Mm-hmm.
But then, of course, acting is also about being yourself too, right? So It's the aspect of you that is that character. So I personally may not walk like that character does, but I usually try and figure out, what is it about, and when I can walk like this character, I feel that the rest of it almost takes care of itself. The less I try and do, quote unquote, I think the more I can allow whatever is in me that is this character to come out.
Okay, that's it. You're the first person to say the physicality of a character, so that's very interesting.
Well, I'm not applying that as how every actor works or should work.
Yeah.
But I think because I think because I think partly because I started as a writer, the sort of psychological part of all of it takes care of itself for me, right? Because I understand story from the perspective of being a writer, and I understand story from the perspective of being an actor, and being a storyteller is what both of those jobs is, right? You're an actor by being a storyteller in front of the camera. You're a writer by being a storyteller on paper. You're a director by being a storyteller with the camera. You're the editor is the storyteller after the camera stops rolling. Right. And so it's all storytelling, and so that part of it to me is the same job no matter what hat you're wearing. So to sort of distinguish the acting side of it, I think the physicality is what makes it not writing, you know, and so that's something that allows me to be an actor. Right. Is understanding the physicality. I mean, the clothes matter, right? Yeah. And so, for example, in the girlfriend experience, you know, everybody's wearing suits, but because of who I was as a character, I worked very closely with the costume designer to make sure that what I was wearing was reflective of who this character was, and he was not like the other lawyers in the firm where the story takes place. Right. Well, and so what I wear was not going to be exactly the same as what they were, except they were all suits. But you know, within that palette, we found some unique things to do to make the character. So yeah, I haven't thought about it until you asked me, but yeah, the physicality actually allows me to get under the skin of the character, because I think the psychological part of it kind of takes care of itself.
Oh yeah, that makes total sense. I mean, if I'm gonna play the role, or you know, the role that you play, actually, I got recast. I didn't want to tell you this, but I'm now playing your role.
Hey, well, that's okay. As long as they still pay me, I don't care.
Oh yeah, no, I'll be playing it, but you'll get all the money for it. That's fine, you know.
It makes it easy then.
Yeah. And so it makes sense, if I'm going to be, you know, a big powerful lawyer, I want to look like one, dress like one, and then that's a bit easier to get into that mindset.
Well, that's exactly right. And in the case of the part I played on the girlfriend experience, you know, it was interesting that they cast me as this managing partner, because I'm the only non-white, you know, character in the law firm. So that is you know, I'm not ignoring that, right? So I thought about, you know, here's an Indian American guy, you know, he's become the managing partner of this law firm. He didn't get that job by having an uncle who owned the firm, right? Because he's the son of immigrants, and they've come here, and he's you know, he's had to have been twice as good to get where he is, like any, you know, because compared to everybody else. So that knowledge, that sensibility, I wanted to bring to how he walked, and I wanted to bring to what he wore, because that is part of the character. That's as much the character as, you know, what I was going to be saying, and what I was going to be saying wasn't my job. That was the writing that took care of what I said, but only I was going to figure out how this character walks, and he doesn't walk like I do. He walks in his own way. I mean, he wears Oxford leather shoes with hard, you know, like I don't wear those shoes. So, you know, there's all those things, and it all adds up into being the specific character rather than a generic character. And I think that's the goal when you're an actor.
And so what was it that attracted you to this role?
You know, it's funny. I wish I could say I was attracted to the part, but I really didn't know I was going to play this part. I auditioned for a whole other part. I auditioned for this 3-line part as an East Indian businessman with an accent who was going to be hiring one of the escorts, and I thought I nailed that part. And then my agent said, "No, you didn't get that part. They want to cast you as the managing partner of the law firm. It's a recurring character. You're going to be in the show." And I said, "Well, do they want me to do it with an Indian accent? Because that's all I've seen." And they said, "No." So the part was kind of thrust upon me, and I really didn't know much about it until I started actually playing him and reading the scripts as they came out. So again, show business isn't quite as mysterious as it sounds. This was kind of a big break.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's always nice where you don't get the smaller part, but they're like, you know what? Let's give him the bigger part.
It doesn't happen very often,
No.
let me tell you.
And so I'm just wondering, is it weird going in for those roles where you do have to play or do an Indian accent and stuff like that?
Well, it isn't weird because for me,
right.
If the character has an accent, they have an accent because they're an immigrant or they're whatever, and I'm okay with that. I mean, acting is acting, and because of my type, it's going to happen that I'm up for a part where the character has an accent. I was on a show called The Strain last year,
Yeah.
and I played a character who has an Indian accent, and that's me acting, but I hope I do it authentically so that it feels real and true and not phony. And so as long as that's the case, it's not weird so much as another way of being an actor, and I like being an actor. Now, that said, if it's a stereotype or something,
right,
demeaning or whatever, I've turned those down. But for the most part, it isn't, and I'm keen to exercise my acting muscles regardless. So yeah, I'm in.
There we go. And do you have an audition story, whether it was good or bad, just a weird audition, I guess?
Well, auditioning is weird at the best of times.
Yeah.
Mainly because you're not acting with, the people you would be doing the scene with.
Right.
You're not acting often. You're not even acting for the people you're going to be working for, like the director or the producers or anything. You're acting for the casting director. And the person reading opposite you is another actor who's just reading opposite every actor coming in to meet the casting director that day. So it's a very artificial setting.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll tell you a story about I was in a ABC pilot.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, 15 years ago. And I don't know if you talk to actors who've tested for pilots, but at this time, they may not do it anymore, but you had to, they brought in their 3 or 4 top choices to Los Angeles to test in front of the network. And I went in, having never done this kind of thing before, and it's a lot of pressure and very nerve-wracking because they make you wait around for 2 hours while they mix and match with other members of their potential cast, and then finally it's your turn, and you go in. And you go into this theater where the head of ABC and 20 other people are sitting, and this was a comedy, mm-hmm. and you're reading opposite somebody, but it's not like a setting for the show. It's a theater, so how do you do this? And then I don't know why, but the person they have reading for you is like the world's worst actor, like. And I've talked to enough, actors who've gone through this often. They says, "Oh yeah, they do that on purpose because they really want to see you under pressure." Oh. So all of the timing and all of the the snappy dialogue or whatever is required, you're not getting it back. So you're really in this pressure cooker vacuum situation, and you got to do it. And I ended up getting the part in that pilot. Unfortunately, it didn't get picked up, but it was fun to do. But I would say that's the weirdest situation, where it was the highest pressure situation I've been in, and they gave me the world's worst actor to read opposite.
It must also be weird. You said they bring in 3 people for the same role. You have to sit with the same people that are going after that role.
Oh yeah, we're hanging out in the hallway of ABC, for 2 hours, exchanging war stories, wondering what the heck are they doing in there. Yeah, and because at a certain level you end up knowing, it's a community, right? Mm-hmm. So you know them, and it's on the one hand they're your friend usually, or at least your colleague, and on the other hand they're your competition.
There you go.
So it's weird,
Well, Sugith, this is the part of the podcast where I like to give you the floor to talk about whatever you want or promote whatever you want. For sure, I started watching The Girlfriend Experience and I was enjoying it. I got to watch more of it. That's for sure.
Well, I hope people watch The Girlfriend Experience, mainly because I don't think it's like regular TV. Mm-hmm. And what was interesting about doing the show was, as an actor, how little of the story is told through dialogue. And if you watch a lot of television, you'll know that you could probably turn, you could make a sandwich and listen to the sound and you'd still know what's going on. Whereas with The Girlfriend Experience, if you turn the sound off and just watch the picture, you'll figure out what's going on. Because it's a very visual story and it's a very cinematic story, and it made it really interesting as an actor to be in that kind of creative storytelling situation. So I think you're not watching regular TV, and that's what I would say makes The Girlfriend Experience worth checking out. I've just done a huge pilot for FX, which I can't talk about, otherwise I would plug it. But again, the same thing happened with The Girlfriend Experience as it happened on this new FX show, which is, the part wasn't written for a minority actor. It wasn't meant to be played as a minority, but they cast me anyway, and so that's sort of really exciting. It's reflective of what's happening in television now, where diversity, I think, is becoming more of the norm, and which is great because it's, I think, more reflective of the world we live in, and TV is beginning to be more reflective of the world we live in than it ever was. Oscars notwithstanding, if you know what I'm saying, and I think that's all to the good. I mean, when I started, diverse actors, like you could count them on the fingers of the catcher's mitt. Now you can cast a whole TV series and not have a white guy in it, and I think that's really exciting. I don't think that's happened. We haven't reached that point yet, but we could soon, and I'm okay with that.
There we go. And for the people at home who would like to follow you online, where can they do that?
I have a Facebook page under my name, and I usually post, anything interesting that's going on, like interviews. If there's a link to this podcast, I'd post it there, for example, or like the connect to iTunes, I would do that. And on Twitter, it's at Sugith Varughese. They can follow me, and I'm pretty good with being accessible on social media.
Well, there you go. Awesome. Well, Sugith, I had a wonderful time chatting with you, and like I said, I love hearing about how different actors, go into the characters that they do. So this was great.
Well, I appreciate the chat, Chris, and enjoy your blog and keep up the good work.
I will, and you do the same, sir. And anytime you want to come back, just let me know, all right?
All right, thanks a lot.
All right, have a good day.
You too.
All right, bye-bye.